Well, it's been another Wednesday, and another episode of The Bad Batch has come out. And, well, surprisingly, we've gotten Crosshairs again. And pretty much this one, was a good one. Very good, in fact. I think it's really interesting to realise exactly the attitudes of some of the Imperial officers that are running through the Empire at the minute. They're becoming very dismissive of their clone troopers. And it seems for a fact that life for clones is just only going to get harder and harder. We see for a fact that one clone talking about the fact his retirement was forced upon him. And quite possibly an Imperial officer giving the same spiel. She's probably saying the same thing she's probably said 100 times over by this point, almost like an automatic, sounding a bit like an answering. We also get introduced to pretty much an arrogant, stuck-up Imperial officer who looks like he's going to be working with clones. Oh, clones, why does it have to be clones? Clones. But that's enough of that. The other interesting thing I think about the whole episode was the fact of just how beyond anything and how clever it was that the clones in this episode largely seem to be left with scraps. The officer dislikes the idea of having to work with clones, but at the same time, also the fact he rebukes Crosshair for being out of uniform, well, basically because he had his helmet off. So they fly to the remote outpost and pick up some cargo. And we run into the fact of a number of people realize that the outpost has been coming under attack. And the officer asks where the base commander or contingent commander's men are, and he says, dead, killed in attacks, which pretty much states to that. But also the fact he rebukes and kind of tells him to guard the shuttle for getting in his way when they come off the ramp. I mean, seriously. The Empire is becoming ever more dismissive of its clones. I think ever since the fact of Palpatine's proclamation about clones being so blindly loyal and following orders so blindly, he's taking up to really step up the idea of rolling out the Stormtroopers and expanding the Stormtrooper Corps. I think the most interesting thing about the whole episode was the fact the cargo they were guarding. I thought it was something top secret, like maybe perhaps the new blasters that were being issued to the Stormtroopers, that would be issued to the Stormtroopers later on, or something like that. But what it turns out to be was something even more interesting, or more mundane. I think the other thing is also interesting was the fact they came to a cold weather planet, but the troopers there, instead of wearing clone cold weather gear, which was proper, they took strips of fabric and wrapped them around their bodies to help keep them warm. And Crosshairs and the 4 clones sent with the officer weren't issued with any sort of environmental specific clothing or armour, which is something I never expected. But what was interesting to me was the fact the outpost had only come to attack, and their sensor grid was patchy at best, and the commander has asked for replacements but didn't get them. It almost seems as if the Empire's trying to get rid of clones and is going to blame every small piece of mishap on them. And I wondered exactly who was staging the whole thing behind. Well, the base is attacked, and despite being nearly blinded, Crosshairs does make the shot and does wound the person who planted the bomb, but a few of them escape with some crates, but it doesn't get far. And their new commander tells the base commander and Crosshairs to go after the clone or person who's formed the attack. And they do. And I thought it was actually in the fact they were wearing stolen clone trooper armour and probably adapting it to the same way the fact the clones did. And I really thought the fact these might have been part of Rex's gang. But it turns out, in actual fact, they were probably most likely local aliens or something like that, who were stealing the equipment for their own personal use or to sell on the black market. They even used Clone Wars era blasters. And what was in the crate I think was another interesting surprise as well. Given the fact that Crosshairs and the clone squad commander form a fast friendship or a begrudging respect. Crosshairs says about something like dead weight, and at the same time, Mayday, who's the name of the base's commander, repairs a landmine or defuses it using improvisation. It was like the fact they've been using the supply runs to block their tunnel amongst everything else. But also, something I didn't expect was the fact that what was in the crates. It was Clone Wars era equipment. Or rather, more specifically, it was the new Stormtrooper equipment. And you initially thought it was new Clone Wars gear, but in actual fact, and of course, Mayday says the fact that I could use this stuff, but they don't get it. And then, it turns out for a fact that their blaster fire and the explosion of the proximity mines or landmines caused an avalanche, which pretty much buried both of them alive. And by some sheer strength of will, Crosshair managed to get both he and Mayday back. But the commander is very dismissive. So dismissive, in fact, that he pretty much just refuses to give Mayday medical attention, saying the fact that all clones are expendable, which gets pretty dark. And Crosshair rebukes him, saying the fact you could have saved him, amongst other stuff. I mean, that was one of his brothers who he's just seen killed by this merciless Imperial officer. But that is nothing compared to what's going to happen next. The biggest shock, I think, for me at the end of the episode was the fact when Crosshair pulled out his blaster and shot the commander, which I think is obviously a sign of things to come. This is Crosshair, who initially went along with the New Order almost willingly, and pursued the Bad Batch very willingly until nearly getting burned alive. And then, of course, after it, he collapses and the Stormtroopers approach him with their weapons at the ready. I'm not sure if Crosshair is dead after this episode, or the fact that he might still be alive. No, wait, he actually survived. But then he ends up at the Imperial Research Facility, which I think is quite possibly the same one that we've seen before, including the one with the Zillo Beast clone, and quite possibly the one where the Nicomanon cloning scientist was taken after the destruction of Kamino. So that was certainly interesting to see. Another brilliant aspect of the whole show, or this episode, I think is the fact of just what the Empire is doing. It's why exactly would they take Crosshair to a medical facility? And the standard says, if you cooperate, you will not survive. That tells me one thing, that the experiments being performed at this facility are definitely breaching a whole lot of ethics. And I think Crosshairs, they want Bad Batch. They want Bad Batch 99 for some reason or another. And I can only suppose it might have something to do, I don't know what it might have something to do with. It could lead into episode 9, it could lead into Snoke, or it could be the fact that Palpatine is actually researching more advanced cloning methods. But why would he? I mean, he has the Stormtrooper Corps and probably millions of recruits that can just be trained up. Why would he do all that expense? But, entertaining a small fan theory of mine, I reckon for a fact that Palpatine might be using the clone research, especially the Kaminoan cloning research, for another purpose. More specifically, in the project designed to create a new clone body for him. I mean, Palpatine wasn't exactly young during the throughout the course of the episodes 1, 2, and 3, and his battle at Revenge of the Sith took a lot out of him. Quite a fair bit. Surprised he lived 19 years, and maybe the walking stick we see them. He says the fact he appeared weak in the Legends Dictionary, but there might be another reason for that walking stick. He says he appears weak. It might be the fact he actually uses or by that point, he actually needs a walk just to help him get about, especially when going long distance. Or maybe after the long flight, such as like that, he needs time to refresh himself. So as he becomes fatigued, he becomes more difficult for him to move about, to the point where he does need a walking stick. And once he's in his personal chambers, he can rest and restore his strength. So it most likely the fact that Palpatine might be concerned about the fact that, does the dark side kill you? That's hard to say, really. But given how long humans live, and given the fact of all the abuse that Palpatine has put on his body, cloning might seem like a viable option. Given the fact, despite his incredible strong force powers, one of the strongest in the galaxy, he still only suffers from a great degree of problems. But outside of that, it was a very good episode. And I would like to see, I still want to see Rex and Echo show up again. They haven't shown up yet, but it was nice to see Crosshairs back for one last roundup. Or he might appear again, we just don't know. Maybe this facility, as it's showing up more and more, might play something role in later episodes. It's getting very interesting about sort of like the dark plots and the Imperial Research programs into cloning, into the Zillo Beast, into just about everything. The Zillo Beast is not sort of a resilient creature. And we know for a fact that Palpatine would only do research into this sort of thing because Sith are obsessed with a lot of things, including immortality. And quite possibly, both Jedi and Sith can separate their essences from the body, Jedi entering the Force, and Sith, in Legends at least, being able to imbue their essence into other objects, such as a building or even another body. In the case of Palpatine, using a technique known as essence transfer, so it's possible to transfer their essence between body to body. But outside of that, I'm not sure. He might be using it so he can actually do it. Younger bodies would certainly make sense for someone like Palpatine, who's obsessed with his own immortality. But nonetheless, it's been a very good episode, and I would like to see more Echo and Rex just for one last time, but what I have seen, it's certainly learned a lot more details. It's nice to see the fact that Crosshairs has been selected for some sort of research project, so that's going to play up, I think, again. And it's also nice to see the fact that the Empire is just literally getting rid of the clones slowly but surely, probably in a much more accelerated rate. And the fact that some clones are taking action. This is the first overt act of rebellion done, I think, almost by anybody, or one of the very few, and it's done by a clone. It's a sign of things to come. And possibly might extend otherwise. Maybe the clones might be able to impart a little bit of prop questions of the Empire in the Stormtroopers and maybe even their army recruits. Well, thanks for watching. I've been the Universal Challenger. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and share the video. And I'll catch you in the next one. Cheerio!